Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Accelerator with Michael Conniff. That's me. We're a place for founders, entrepreneurs, startups to meet with angels, VCs, family offices, investment firms. We're kind of in the middle of all that. And we are very happy to welcome to our podcast Jonathan Moore because he is in the middle of all that in South Korea and has been there 16 years and knows a heck of a lot about what's going on there. Welcome, Jonathan. Good to have you on the Accelerator.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Pleasure to be here.
And we have quite a time difference. It's
Yeah,
nighttime where you are and morning where I am, but
exactly.
very happy you could make it. And I just wanted to mention that what you said to me that just today South Korea took off the outdoor mask ban, so you're feeling pretty liberated. What are you going to do to celebrate?
Go for a walk without a mask. I mean, the weather's starting to get a bit warmer, right? It's spring, and I never had a problem wearing a mask, especially in winter. It keeps you warm, but
Yeah.
it's great to be able to at least pull it down a little bit while outside. Indoors, you still have to wear it, but I mean, we all know it's pretty safe to wear it, to not need it outside. So
Yeah,
it's a
of
welcome
course.
change. Yeah.
It's always been safe, according to Dr. Fauci here in the United States. But let's
Yeah.
jump right into South Korea. You've been there 16 years. You started a learning app company 2013. You've worked with accelerators or as a consultant with companies, and you're actually planning a fund in South Korea. And I have your eye on Singapore. I think I put you in touch with James Spurway in Singapore, who's been an angel there for a long time. So that's a lot to get our hands around. But let's start with right at the beginning. Why did you go to South Korea? What was it about the country?
To be honest, I kind of spun the globe around, kind of just chose a random place. I came in 2006.
Why
This,
not North Korea? It's right
uh,
next door.
well, I don't think we can really go to North Korea, but
You would have the country all to yourself,
true.
Jonathan. So there's
That's
that.
true. And
Yeah,
who knows? Maybe I wouldn't be able to leave if I went there. But
right.
I have been there actually on a short vacation. But I came to Korea really without any, major reason. This was way before K-pop and K-dramas were really a thing. So when I chose to go to South Korea, my friends were like, why Korea? And many people didn't even know where Korea was. 15 years ago, it was not really on the map as much as it is today, due to the entertainment industry, the food,
Hmm.
everything Korea is, is just really going viral nowadays. Um, but I really wanted to go somewhere just off, the beaten path. And it was kind of random. I had never been to Asia at that point. I had traveled abroad several times in Europe and South America, and I just wanted to go somewhere different. So I chose South Korea.
Off a spinning globe. And what is it that keeps you there? Because you weren't an entrepreneur when you left, right? So
That's right. That's right.
so you
Uh,
had kind of maybe not a transformation, but certainly an evolution.
Right. So, when I first came here, I came right out of university, and my my major and minor was Spanish and English linguistics, and I just came to teach English for a year. I thought, right out of college, see a new country and just do that. And I had no idea that it would lead me on this path of. I got involved in education a little bit. I met my future co-founder, who had also recently exited from another education company that he started.
Mhm.
He exited for 25 million or something, and he was a great partner for me to have my first venture with. And we just built this app, which was similar to Duolingo, but more for Asian audiences. It was video based instead of text based. And so we really wanted to teach people in East Asia English, but more of kind of business English that people would use in the workplace. And so we
Mhm.
built this, we created tons of content. I would travel all around the world getting new content, interviewing CEOs from startups and corporates, and just creating content to help people learn business English. And that's really how I got into the Korean startup ecosystem and the overall startup ecosystem in general.
What happened to that learning app? What was the evolution? And you did have an exit, I think, right? 2013.
So we started in 2013. We raised about 6 million, which is decent for the time. We acquired a couple million users, mostly focused on B2B for monetization. In the end, though, lots of competition out there, and ultimately, pivoted into something else, and I left. So there was actually no exit there, but there is some form of it there. Now it's doing something with blockchain, but I left years ago, and went on to work with acceleration and to help other startups based on the lessons I learned as an entrepreneur.
What did you learn from that experience? It sounded like maybe it didn't end exactly the way you wanted. So what did you learn from that? Because it's a cliche that you learn more from failure, but it also happens to be one of those cliches that's generally true. So what did you learn?
Very true. It's weird. I hear these stories all the time. Oh yeah, you learn from failure, but it actually is true. Um, uh, there's many lessons I learned, but I would say one that really sticks with me is growing too fast. And well, growing is kind of vague, but I mean, you know, expanding too fast, perhaps. Once we got investment, we hired like crazy. We tried to open offices in several different countries, and I think we weren't quite ready for that. We should have used that money a little bit wiser to really get a hold of the market locally in South Korea and where we already were in Japan and Taiwan. But we really just tried to I think, spread that money a little bit too thin, and that's something I would have changed in hindsight.
It's funny. I had that. I've had that experience more than once. You think that if you go to another location or another country, that you're going to double or maybe triple or thing. But what you forget is that okay, now you have to be two places or three places at once, and you have to have multiple staffs in all likelihood, though maybe less so these days in a virtual world. But it's extremely difficult. So that is definitely a good lesson to know. So
Right.
now we're back in 2013. You've left the company, and what was the name of that company, just for the record?
Our English name was Be Native.
Be Native. Okay,
Yeah.
you've
But
left
I love
Be.
Be. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you've left Be Native, and which has evolved many times since then. What is your mindset? What are you thinking? What do you want to do at that point?
I was really just thinking a lot of what I wanted to do. When I left, it was 2016, um,
Okay.
and I was just really just searching. Just kind of reading books when I could, reading online, seeing what else. What should I do? Should I do some other startup? And in the end, um, I ended up joining another startup in charge of their market. It was their first marketing role for this other company, and they're now a unicorn. When I joined, I think there was about 200 employees, and now it's massive.
And
Um,
what's that one? What is that called?
that one's called iUno, and they do localization services
Hmm.
for Netflix, Disney, these kinds of things. Subtitling, dubbing,
Oh,
post production, these kinds of things. So it was a totally different kind of company, but I
yeah.
wanted to use my marketing background. I had just finished my MBA, just kind of left this startup, and I wanted to do a completely different field. Um, I ended up staying there for just under a year, and then it wasn't for me. Ended up joining a marketing agency for startups, and where we worked on acceleration projects and things like that.
Okay, so it sounds like that became more was closer to maybe what's your calling.
Yes,
What is it about accelerating startups in that area that is of such great interest to you? What was it about that got you excited?
well, I think one, it was able to use the mistakes and the lessons I learned to help other entrepreneurs. That really, I kind of vibed with that a lot. And at Be
Mm.
Native, we actually did start an accelerator, with our education service to help U.S. startups come into the Eastern Asian market. We had already bases in all these countries, and we thought, let's give this a shot. We tried a little bit, and it ultimately didn't work out. But that was my really first foray into the acceleration industry, and being able to do that again with a bit more support and other people who really were in this, system. I loved it. I loved working with so many different startups, not just one, but helping 10 or 12 or 15 at a time. Um, I could easily look at these situations and say, okay, I can guide you a bit based on where I think you should go. I can help you with this, whether it's messaging or maybe look at your business model a little bit, help you with some connections, introduce you to certain people. I'm naturally a people person, so I love connecting people, and I felt, hey, that's what I'm good at, and so been doing that ever since.
We're talking with Jonathan Moore. He is in South Korea. This is the Accelerator with Michael Conniff. That's me. Podcast dedicated to startups, founders, entrepreneurs, and the angels, VCs, family offices, and investment firms who support them. So this is very interesting. Now you're kind of at this point in the after the marketing, when you get to the marketing agency in particular, you're starting to really facilitate things. What are you learning? And where are you from originally? And tell me about the cultural differences of trying to do this in South Korea.
Okay, yeah, so I'm from Texas originally.
Okay. Of course you are.
Yeah. So
That's,
I grew up in a small town, Abilene, Texas, and went to university also not far from there in Lubbock, Texas Tech University.
yeah.
So always
The
been
Red
from West.
Raiders. The Red Raiders.
Exactly, guns
So
up.
I didn't know that, but you have to meet Travis Bruffy at LIGO Partners in London. He was captain of the football team, and he's in the
Really?
startup space. Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Definitely, I got to be introduced at
yeah.
this
You
point.
got to meet him. Yeah, good contact for you.
I mean, yeah, I love anything to do with sports. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, MVP at the Chiefs and everything out. So
Yeah,
love all that.
Travis played with Patrick Mahomes. Actually, caught a pass from him.
Really?
So
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, so you're from Texas. You end up in South Korea. What's the cultural difference between Texas and South Korea?
Yeah. So like I said, I had traveled a lot internationally before I came here, so I didn't have a kind of major culture shock as some people might.
Mm-hmm.
Going from somewhere West Texas straight to a major city in Asia, um, because I'm used to seeing differences. But the thing is that the differences I noticed here were not things I noticed right away, but
Hmm.
just after staying here a longer time, learning a bit more of the language and the culture, starting to realize, okay, the different way of thinking. That's kind of what got me. So the first couple weeks or months, nothing really stood out as, oh, that's a huge difference. But then when I'm making friends and working with people and knowing more of their mindset, I started realizing more of these differences. Um, but yeah,
And
I
what
mean,
were
there.
the, what were the differences? Excuse me for interrupting, but what were the differences?
I got to think about this. No, but there's a lot of things. For one, taking for granted the fact that I'm from the US, which is a very diverse country. I'm used to seeing people of all races speaking different languages, whereas in Korea, their mindset is very much, hey, we are a one people race with one language. You don't see much diversity except for when you look in the mirror, perhaps, and with other friends who are living here temporarily. Um, so dealing with people from other backgrounds, maybe I think we're used to being a bit sensitive regarding certain things, whereas here they don't grow up with that same privilege, I would say, of knowing people of different backgrounds. So getting used to certain questions from people, that's something to get used to. Um, a lot of Koreans, they might assume um, things about you and where you're from. So a
Mhm.
lot of questions are, hey, does your country also have four seasons? Does it also snow where
Uh,
you're from? I'm like, well, yeah. I just thought I didn't realize I had to talk about these kinds of things. Some simple
yeah.
things. They're just very curious, which many of us are, which is fine. Um, but yeah, I mean, food is different. Um,
So basically, a complete sort of disconnect about who we are, who they are. So let's turn this to the companies themselves. So what I guess my one of my major questions is: are the companies looking to be successful in South Korea, in Southeast Asia, or worldwide, including America. What are the ambitions of the South Korean entrepreneur
So
typically?
that's a great segue, actually, because um, as far as culture differences here, I think coming from a Western country, we kind of think globally from the beginning. It's just kind of like, well, of course we're going to go global. Whereas many people here, they may not be thinking that way. They might just think, okay, I know Korea, I'm Korean, so that's my thing, right? I think nowadays a lot more people do want to find global success, but a good portion of them don't know how. So they need to talk to people like me who, okay, might know a little bit more about the outside world. Some people do have this kind of closed mentality of just, you know what, I don't understand about it, anything about this, so I'm not going to do it. Whereas many people, they are, hey, you know what? I speak a little English. Let's do this thing. But they just don't know what to do, what steps
Mhm.
to take. How do I actually incorporate in another country? How do I target customers in another country? You know, what many people uh, fail to do is how to make a marketing strategy. It's not just a copy and paste, you know, translate the same word, use the same icons and colors, and it'll just work magically in other countries, right? And I think a lot of American companies have learned this the hard way. With you see some marketing strategies that have gone wrong, right? You've probably heard of stories of a car company in South America doing the wrong thing, or Coca-Cola opening in China. These old ancient myths or urban legends of how they've failed to go abroad. In here they may not realize some of these things. You know what? If we translate that directly, it may not have the exact effect we think it will because of
Mm.
different cultural backgrounds. So, I really just want to help these guys um, expand to new markets and kind of, be aware of certain differences and help them where they may be lacking.
I'd love to know about specific South Korean companies that you think are really interesting. Do any come to
Uh,
mind?
there are a lot. I'm just trying to think of a specific one. Okay, so the first one on top of my head, someone asked me this also recently. There's a company, in my mind, it's the fastest growing early stage company. I think they just finished their Series A. It's called Business Canvas, um, and they have a product called Typed, and it's basically like a Google Docs on steroids. You know, it's founded by an ex Deloitte consultant, and he was telling me, look, as consultants or students or journalists, anyone has to do research. They have to have so many tabs open, right? I got research here, I got my Word document here, so many things open. We just lose so much time in that process. And so he's building a product to help solve that, to put everything in kind of one thing. And they have gotten amazing support. They were accepted into Techstars London. They, recently just finished their Series A, and they only launched like a year ago. I mean, they really fast. Within, I think, 7 or 8 months, they had already built their MVP and raised a pre-seed, and then shortly after got their Series A. So really, really fast. Building a great team. There's someone I've met with several times, so that's why I know a lot about them. I run a startup pitch event called Podium Star, and so they pitched in that event, and I was able to help them meet other investors. And so
Did they
really,
win the event? Did they win the
um,
pitch?
I don't remember if they won that specific one. They may have gotten second place. I think they actually
Yeah,
did get second place.
yeah,
And that's just very, subjective who wins a pitch competition.
sure.
The main point for us is the connections they get from that. We
Yeah.
help before they pitch. We work with them on their messaging, their pitch
Hmm.
deck design, because we really want the results to, we really want people to just match well with either accelerators or venture capitalists and really just make something happen. So
I
we've done some.
actually would go farther on the pitch front. I've watched a lot of unicorn pitches in particular, and but not just unicorn, others as well. And I think that anyone who goes by the winners of these pitch contests is making a big mistake. That you really have to decide for yourself.
Right.
People win for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes they're charismatic. Sometimes they're in the metaverse. So I'm sure that's been your experience as well. So let's talk about first of all, any other companies that you're really excited about in South Korea?
Um, there's just so many and so many different levels. I mean, I work with dozens at any given time. Right now, I'm working with 5 fintech companies and 10 metaverse and about 6 NFT companies. But
Boy,
to name some,
you've covered all the bases there. That's all the hot. No AI.
we deal with AI quite often. That's a big
Yeah,
thing in Korea. But
yeah.
um, but our upcoming Podium Star event, which is May 19th, at least Korea time, it's all on the metaverse. So that's what I'm focused on right now. Is
Oh.
just these metaverse companies. So if people are interested, they should definitely sign up for that event. That's going to be um, uh, it's going to be pretty. The time is pretty okay for the U.S. time zone, so we scheduled it that way.
Is it in English?
It's 100% in English. That's
Oh,
what we
okay.
want to do. We want to help these startups connect outside of Korea. So we only do it in English. We try to get investors from outside of Korea who maybe they're looking to diversify their portfolio a little bit, or they're
Hmm.
really interested in Korean technology, but they don't know what to look for. It's really hard to find information about Korean startups unless you speak Korean. Because when you
Unless we
Google that,
know, unless we know you, Jonathan Moore, Mr. Startup in Korea. So you have your eyes on Singapore as a way to kind of logically extend what you're doing. Why Singapore?
you know, um, I think everyone has this dream and vision of Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, that's the main step to go to. And I think that's great. Obviously Silicon Valley is just it's number one in the world for the startup ecosystem, for investment, for everything. But I don't think it makes sense for it to be the number one, be all place for every startup. I think for a lot of companies here in South Korea, I think Singapore makes a better cultural fit. Not only is it closer, they can they can find investors who are more involved in the Asian ecosystem. Um, because for Korea, even Singapore is very foreign, right? If they don't speak English, that's a very difficult place to go to. But it's way easier to connect with another Asian country, especially one that speaks English and that's heavily involved in the Southeast Asian um,
Mhm.
community versus going all the way to the U.S. So if it makes sense to go to the U.S., fine. But I feel like so many other startups would benefit from exploring the Southeast Asian market. And I've
So
been there.
I'm sorry, keep going. Forgive me.
I've been there several times recently in January and just meeting with people, and they all share the same thing. They'd love to learn more and see more Korean startups. And I feel like Korean startups are going to benefit as well. So I really think it's a win-win situation.
I will caution you on your original advice about being careful about expanding, but but it makes a lot of sense. So logistically, how do you do it? How do you kind of create that connection and an ecosystem that links Singapore to South Korea? What do you literally do to make that happen?
Well, first of all, I have to say I don't have the answers all right now. This is still a work in progress that I'm building with a partner here. Um, so I do a little work with Techstars here in South Korea as a mentor and as an entrepreneur in residence. And me and the other guy who's working at Techstars here as a program director, we've been kind of the ones behind this initiative. And so, um, you know, as a background with acceleration, we kind of know how to help these early stage startups make their first steps outside of the country. And I've learned enough not to make the same mistakes, I think. So, we want to do it slowly in the right way. So, what we want to do is we want to help these startups who have a good fit for the Southeast Asian market. We want to help them with funding. We also want to invest in them. We want to introduce them to other investors as well. We want to introduce them to partners where it makes sense. So if there's some B2B fintechs, we want to introduce them to you know uh, these major financial institutions in Singapore who have a lot more leverage than a lot of the subsidiaries in or the branches in Korea, since they're just local branches. Singapore is the head of APAC for many companies. It just makes sense, especially for
Yeah,
B2B.
no, it does, and we wish you luck in that endeavor. And so I guess you've been there 16 years. That's a long time, obviously. Um, when was the last time you were back in the States?
Good question. It was 2019, summer of 2019. Just
Pre-pandemic, of course.
because I would go every summer to see my family. Summer vacation, that was the best time to see my parents and siblings. And 2020 couldn't go. 2021, I could have gone, but I was working on a project that was really important. Sorry, mom. And promised this time I'm going. So I'm going this July.
Sorry, Mom. Oh, that's good. You'll make up for
Yeah.
lost time. How do they feel about their son, like doing this strange thing over in South Korea?
Oh goodness, my mom and my sister both are they've been ready for years. When are you coming back? When are you coming home?
Sure.
So, we've been talking about that, and we'll see. Maybe I'm in Singapore for a little bit, or maybe I'm in a situation where I'm going back regularly, which would be the optimal situation. But can't
But
please
there's
everyone.
something, yeah, I mean, obviously there's something you must love about that country to keep you there, to keep you so engaged. What is it? What is it about South Korea?
I think it's just, I like things about the U.S., but here, um, there's just things move so fast, and it's so exciting. Um, you know,
They move fast in South Korea.
oh
It
yes,
feels
they're known for that. So, I
okay.
mean, this is a country that used to be one of the poorest countries in the world just from the 50s and 60s. And then from the 70s and 80s, saw rapid growth. And now it's the number 12 economy in the world. I think they're one of the only countries that used to
Wow.
receive UNICEF funding to now be giving UNICEF funding. Um,
Hmm.
it is just, you look at photos of, type in Seoul 1970 and look at, 50 years later, it's just crazy to see what they've done. And I don't see any other countries doing something so drastic. But it's not just the history. Things are just always done really quickly here. I go on a business trip to Europe or to the US and I need to print something, posters or brochures. They say, okay, 3 to 5 business days. That would never happen here. You get that same day or next day. Everything is same day or next day. And that's just one example. Food delivery was a thing before. I think it was back in the U.S. I mean, things are just always done very, very fast here.
Well, if South Korea is so speeded up, then I would have to guess it's a great place to be Mr. Accelerator because they're going fast already.
There's
um,
so many startups here, and they're all so exciting. So yeah, I'm blessed to be in this situation to see so
yeah.
many startups who are doing awesome things.
Well, we're really excited for you, and we are going to introduce you to Travis Bruffy, the captain of the Texas Tech football team a few years ago, and Um, we're really happy to have you here on the accelerator, Jonathan. So thanks so much for being with us, and please stay in touch. And we'd love to hear more about your pitch events. If you
Yes,
let me know, I will put it on my network.
that's
Um,
great. Yeah, it's podiumstar.org for anyone who's listening. Podiumstar.org.
and what you said May 19th in Korea, does that mean May 18th here?
Great question. It's too late for me to think about what the time difference is. Um, I believe it is going to be the night of the 18th, the evening
Okay.
of.
Well,
I
check
guess.
podiumstars.org. And obviously, Jonathan is up to his eyeballs in startups in South Korea, soon to be Singapore. You're exactly the kind of person I like to have on the show because I feel like it's important for us to touch base at the very least in each of the countries where we can find somebody who's really dedicated to making startups happen. So Jonathan, it's great to know you, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks very much for having me.
And you've been listening to The Accelerator with Michael Conniff. You can find me on Twitter at Michael Conniff, MichaelConniff, 2 N's and 2 F's, or go to my website, michaelconniff.com. We are on all the major podcast platforms, also on YouTube, also on my website. So please find a way to listen to us, subscribe, and even give us a good rating if you have a chance. So that's it for now, but we'll be back before you know it. And thanks for being with us.